Everything was going so well, and the highs were there, and all of a sudden there was the biggest low of all time.
Peter McNamara was a tennis star rocking the courts in both singles and doubles, scoring 3 Grand Slam doubles titles. Life was on the upswing until suddenly tragedy struck. A serious illness crept in and sadly took his life. And that's just the beginning of the heartbreak that kept him from returning to the game he loved. Stay tuned to hear the full story. Peter McNamara, born on July 5, 1955, in Melbourne, Australia, had quite the journey. Growing up in Melbourne, where his dad owned a haberdashery store, Peter went to Marcellin College, a Catholic school in Baleine. Once he hit the pro tour, he teamed up with Paul McNamara, who came from a less privileged background. McNamara once said, "We were different personalities, but quickly realized it was futile trying to change one another. The main point was that our games complemented each other's." Peter, known for his on-court flair, is probably best remembered for his incredible doubles partnership with McNamara. The Supermacs, as they were called, snagged the Wimbledon men's doubles titles in 1980 and 1982, plus the Australian Open in 1979. They were among the 14 titles they won as one of Australia's most successful tennis teams. McNamara fondly recalls, "He lived life to the fullest. He was just great company. I was lucky to know him for over 50 years as a friend." Peter's doubles success didn't stop there. He won 19 doubles titles in total, including 3 with Swiss player Heinz Gunthard and others, with fellow Australian Paul Cronk and American Billy Martin. To put it simply, he was quite the athlete. Before I dive further into his backstory, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our latest content. Now, back to Peter. He also had an impressive singles career, winning 5 singles titles and reaching world number 7 in 1983. He had victories over legends like Jimmy Connors and even Lendl, and had notable Grand Slam results, reaching the Australian Open semifinals in 1980 and the quarterfinals of both Wimbledon in 1981 and the French Open in 1982. I mean, how cool is that? McNamara mentions the 1981 Hamburg title, where Peter defeated Connors in the final, as one of the highlights of his career. What Peter did in Hamburg that year was unbelievable. He beat Connors in the final just a week after taking down Lendl in the World Cup in Dusseldorf, McNamara recalled. He was just playing out of his mind. Finishing 1981 and 1982 in the top 10 in the world was an amazing feat. Peter's rise in both singles and doubles was a testament to his stunning all-court style. McNamara said, "His backhand was something else. You could make postcards out of it. It was that beautiful. There wasn't a better-looking backhand around." Peter was especially proud of representing Australia in the Davis Cup. He had a 10-11 win-loss record, 9-7 in singles, 1-4 in doubles, across 10 ties between 1980 and 1986. He was part of the Australian team that won the Davis Cup in 1986, winning singles matches against New Zealand in the first round before Australia clinched the title against Sweden in the final. As you can see, he had settled quite comfortably into that tennis life, and his entire world revolved around the sport. But as fate would have it, tragedy first struck him in the form of a life-altering injury. In 1983, Peter climbed to number 7 in the singles rankings. But just as he was hitting his peak, he had to retire from both singles and doubles competition 4 years later. This happened right after he defeated Ivan Lendl in the final of an indoor tournament in Brussels. Here's how it went down. In the next tournament in Rotterdam, the acrylic hardcourt surface had uneven edges. During his first-round match against Jerry Granat, Peter stepped on an affected area, twisted his knee, and that effectively ended a career that many believed was on the verge of greatness. Bill Norris, the chief physio on the ATP Tour, rushed to his side. Peter tore the anterior cruciate ligament and damaged his medial meniscus on those warped boards, Norris said. He went through months of rehab, but his mobility was never quite the same. How heartbreaking is that? It's incredible how something as simple as a twisted knee can change the course of a promising career, don't you think? Naturally, he was off the tour for 21 months, and his victory over Lendl turned out to be the last singles title he ever won. "Macca's backhand was as good as I've ever seen, one-handed and beautiful," said Pat Cash, who was emerging as a top Australian Davis Cup player around the same time. Back in 1981, before that tragedy shook his world, his all-around talent shone brightly when he won the German Open, beating Jimmy Connors 7-6, 6, 1-4, 6, 6-4, in what I consider the best match I ever saw him play. Even though European clay wasn't Connors' best surface, it was still a remarkable achievement. Hamburg's Rothenbaum Club has some of the heaviest clay courts, thanks to its damp climate, and few naturally attacking players enjoy playing on it. But unlike Connors, McNamara had done his homework. During the summers of 1977 and 1978, he skipped the main ATP Tour to play in smaller events all over France, from Beaulieu on the Mediterranean coast to La Baule on the Atlantic. "Great for my clay court game," he once reflected. "Great food and wine, everyone seems pleased to see me, and I get a few $100 guaranteed." It really shaped him into a fine clay court player. Once he realized his knee would never fully recover, he didn't let the grief take over him. That's just the kind of adaptable nature he had. Instead, he took up coaching and became a tough taskmaster. He arrived in Toulouse with a young Mark Philippoussis, giving some advice about work ethic. Philippoussis took his lessons to heart and went on to reach the finals of Wimbledon and the U.S. Open. Later, he worked with Grigor Dimitrov at the Patrick Mouratoglou Academy in Paris, then with Matt Ebden, and until recently with the Chinese player Wang Qiang, whose WTA ranking rose to number 20 under his guidance. But the knee injury wasn't even the final blow. A disease took over his life, weakening his otherwise strong body, and stopped him from continuing his tennis journey altogether. Soon he passed away at his home in Germany on a Saturday night after a long and courageous battle with prostate cancer. According to family friend and commentator David Law, he continued to play exhibition matches and coach throughout his illness, with few people ever knowing of his struggle. It's amazing how he managed to keep his battle with cancer so private while still being active in tennis. His story is truly inspiring. Even after being diagnosed with prostate cancer, he kept coaching and playing exhibition matches. He was still trying to hit a few balls, McNamee said, reflecting on McNamara's passion for life and tennis. He was a tennis player who loved his life and loved his profession. He passed away peacefully, with his wife Petra by his side. He leaves behind 4 children and 5 grandchildren. He wouldn't realize the outpouring of love that there's been today, McNamee mentioned at his funeral, overwhelmed by the positive messages from many of the game's most prominent figures. "I've had hundreds of messages, from John McEnroe to Darren Cahill, to Wally Mazer and Pat Cash. I could go on and on." Craig Tiley, CEO of Tennis Australia, described the late athlete as one of the great people of our sport. Tiley said, "I always felt that he was in many ways invincible because of his life as a player and as a coach." If you read what people are saying today, it's clear how much he cared about individuals and their development. Every player he coached improved and went to a different level after working with him. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out our latest one on Roger Taylor. I'm sure you'll like it.